Too many people fail not because their goals were too big but because their systems were too weak. We've been told to dream big, set goals, and chase success. But what if the very idea of setting goals is the problem? What if, instead of chasing an outcome, you build a process that guarantees progress every single day? You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the strength of your systems. This is the secret of high performers, elite athletes, and successful creators. They don't just wish to win, they design their life to win. Let's uncover the 6 powerful truths behind setting systems instead of goals, because your future is not built in the future. It's built today by what you do consistently. A goal is just a result. A system is how you get there. Most people don't fail because they didn't set the right goal. They fail because they never built the right process. Think about it. Anyone can set a goal. It takes 10 seconds to say, I want to lose weight, or I want to get rich, or I want to write a best-selling novel. But goals are cheap. Everyone has them. What truly matters is what you're doing every single day to move toward it. Imagine 2 writers. The first one says, I want to be a best-selling author. It sounds bold, it sounds inspiring, but what does that actually do? Nothing. It's just a wish until action shows up. There's no plan, no movement, no traction. And more often than not, life gets in the way, distractions show up, doubt creeps in. And one day, they look up and realize the goal has become a ghost. They're no closer to it than the day they set it. Now imagine a second writer. She doesn't shout her ambition from the rooftops. She simply sits down every morning at 7 a.m. and writes 500 words. Rain or shine, inspired or not, no excuses. Day after day, week after week. And here's what happens. Her writing improves. Her confidence grows. And before she knows it, she's sitting on a 90,000-word manuscript. Not because she dreamed big, but because she showed up small consistently. That's the quiet power of a system. It doesn't rely on motivation or big declarations. It relies on rhythm, repetition, and structure. And in that structure, something beautiful forms. Momentum. Real, steady, unshakable momentum. We live in a culture obsessed with goals. Social media celebrates the before and after, but never shows the during. People want to skip the process and grab the prize. But life doesn't work that way. Think of athletes. The goal is to win the championship. But what separates the champion from the runner-up isn't just talent, it's the system behind the scenes, the training schedule, the recovery plan, the nutrition routine, the drills repeated 1,000 times when nobody is watching. Because here's the truth. Winners and losers often have the same goals. Every Olympic athlete wants gold. Every entrepreneur wants to succeed. Every student wants to pass. But what separates them is not what they want, it's what they've designed to get it. It's the system. The daily actions that become habits. The habits that form identity. And the identity that transforms outcomes. Systems are honest. You can't fake them. You can't cheat them. They reflect exactly what you're willing to do, day in and day out. A good system doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for consistency. It doesn't wait for inspiration, it creates routine. And it doesn't depend on how you feel today, it depends on what you committed to yesterday. So the next time you're tempted to write another big goal, pause. Ask yourself, what system am I putting in place to make this real? Because without that system, your goal is just a hope. And hope alone doesn't build anything, but structure does, process does. Consistent action does. Your future isn't shaped by what you want, it's shaped by what you repeat. And if you can build a system you believe in, something you can show up to daily, even imperfectly, you'll create a force greater than motivation. You'll create momentum. And momentum, unlike inspiration, doesn't fade when life gets hard. It keeps moving. And it keeps you moving. Goals rely on motivation. Systems rely on structure. And in the real world, structure always wins. At the beginning of any journey, motivation feels like everything. It's that electric energy that pushes you out the door, makes you dream bigger and imagine the version of yourself that you've always wanted to become. But here's the problem. Motivation is emotional. It's fleeting. It comes in waves and it leaves without warning. It's why most people start strong and fade fast. Because they built their hopes on feelings, not frameworks. Think back to January. You set your New Year resolution. You got the gym membership, bought the workout clothes, maybe even shared your goals online. The excitement was real. For the first few days, maybe even weeks, you showed up. But then the weather got colder. Life got busier. And suddenly the drive that once pushed you became a weight that dragged you. You skipped a day, then two. And eventually you told yourself you'd start again next Monday. But Monday never came. Because the motivation was gone, and there was no system to catch you when it disappeared. This is where most people give up. Not because they're weak or lazy or uncommitted, but because they depended on a fuel that was never meant to last. Motivation is a spark. And sparks are beautiful, but without structure, they fade out. You don't keep a fire alive with sparks. You keep it alive with firewood. That firewood is your system. Systems keep you moving when you don't feel like it. They don't care if you're tired, distracted, uninspired, or even disappointed in yourself. They give you something solid to stand on when your emotions are shifting. You don't brush your teeth every morning because you're motivated. You do it because it's automatic. It's wired into your life. And that's exactly how you need to approach your goals. Not as something you chase only when you feel good, but as something you do, because that's just who you are now. Imagine if you treated your creative work the same way. Writing every day, not when inspiration hits, but because it's 6 a.m. and that's when you write. Investing not only when you feel confident, but every month on a set date without fail. Eating well, not when you're trying to hit a short-term goal, but because you've created a grocery system, a meal prep rhythm, and a kitchen that makes healthy decisions easier than unhealthy ones. The difference between struggling and succeeding is often just one thing: structure. When there's structure, there's safety. There's something to fall back on. It doesn't mean every day will feel good or every effort will be perfect. It just means you keep showing up. Because the system is what moves you forward when everything else in your life wants to pull you back. That's the gift of systems. They make discipline feel less like punishment and more like protection. They help you avoid the constant battle with your feelings. Because let's be honest, some days you won't feel like working. Some days you'll doubt yourself. Some days you'll want to quit. But if the system is strong enough, you won't have to negotiate with your emotions. You'll just follow the process. You don't have to be motivated every day to be consistent. You just have to create something that allows consistency to live even when motivation dies. Build a life where the hard things become normal, automatic, expected, not because you're superhuman, but because you've designed the system to carry you when motivation can't. And that, more than anything, is what will move you forward. Every single time. Here's the trap that most people fall into. They set a goal and quietly make a deal with themselves. I'll be happy when I achieve this. It sounds innocent, even motivational. But underneath, there's a hidden cost, because what you're really saying is, I won't be happy until I get there. And that means every moment between now and the goal becomes a waiting room for joy. You delay your self-worth. You postpone your peace. You sacrifice the present for some imagined version of the future. Take the goal of losing 10 kilograms. It's a common one. You might start off with intense discipline, counting every calorie, skipping meals, stepping on the scale morning and night, watching your body like a hawk. You might even see progress. But underneath it all is anxiety, pressure, a desperate hunger, not just for food, but for approval, for validation, for that moment when the number finally says, you did it. And then one day you hit it, 10 kilograms gone. And for a fleeting moment you feel relief. Maybe even joy. But here's what usually happens next: you let go. You ease up. The habits weren't sustainable because they weren't rooted in joy, they were rooted in punishment. And slowly, quietly, the weight comes back. Not because you're weak, but because you were chasing a goal instead of building a system. A goal will get you to a moment. A system will carry you through a life. Now imagine someone else, same starting point. Same desire to lose weight. But instead of fixating on the number, they build a system. They say, every morning I go for a 30-minute walk. I eat real, whole food 80% of the time. I go to the gym 3 times a week, and I don't obsess over perfection. There's no finish line here because the system isn't about reaching a goal. It's about building a lifestyle. They might lose weight slowly. They might even plateau, but they feel good. They feel empowered. And most importantly, they stay there because they didn't starve themselves to get the result. They nourished themselves to create a rhythm. When you build systems instead of goals, you stop postponing your life. You stop saying, I'll feel confident when, and start showing up in confidence now. Because your joy is no longer tied to achievement, it's tied to alignment. Every action you take, every day you follow the system, you're reinforcing the life you've chosen. And that brings a kind of quiet pride that no trophy ever could. We've been conditioned to think happiness lives on the other side of achievement. But it doesn't. It lives in the habits, in the process, in the ordinary moments that build your future. If you want to be a great writer, don't chase a book deal, build a writing system. If you want to be financially free, don't just dream about wealth, create a system of saving, investing, and living below your means. If you want love, joy, peace, they're not waiting at the top of a mountain. They live in the small decisions you make every day. A goal asks, what do you want? A system asks, who are you becoming? And the second question matters more. Because becoming someone who shows up with consistency, who chooses discipline without punishment, who builds habits with compassion, that's not just about achievement. That's about peace. And when peace becomes your daily companion, you realize something powerful. Happiness was never something to reach. It was something to practice. So stop delaying your joy. Don't wait for the goal to give you permission to feel good. Build a system that lets you feel good now. Because when success becomes a lifestyle, the destination takes care of itself. Goals say, I want to run a marathon. Systems say, I am a runner. And that single shift from outcome to identity is where real transformation begins. Because when you chase a goal, you're chasing a moment in time, a finish line, an achievement. But when you build a system, you're choosing to become someone new. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. It sounds subtle, but it changes everything. A person with a goal asks, what do I need to do? But a person with a system rooted in identity asks, what kind of person would do this naturally? And then they live like that person daily without needing a trophy to prove it. Imagine someone who says, I want to run a marathon. So they train hard for 6 months, pushing through pain and exhaustion. And maybe they finish the race. It's a proud day. But then it's over. They stop running. There's no structure to continue. Because the whole identity was built around reaching the goal, not becoming the runner. A few months later, the running shoes are in the back of the closet, the schedule is back to normal, and the discipline fades away. The goal was met, but the change didn't last. Now imagine someone else. They don't talk much about races. They just lace up their shoes and run 4 times a week no matter what. Short runs, long runs, rain or shine, no spotlight. No countdown to race day. Just the rhythm of a runner who isn't trying to prove something but live something. To them, running isn't something they do, it's who they are. And whether they sign up for a marathon or not, they keep showing up. Because their identity is connected to their system, not the result. This applies to every area of life. If you tell yourself, I want to eat healthier, you might last a few weeks. But if you begin to believe, I am someone who cares for my body, then the choice to eat clean becomes instinctive. You're not fighting temptation. You're honoring your identity. The same applies to a student who sees themselves not just as someone who wants to pass exams, but as someone who is curious, committed, and disciplined. Studying doesn't feel like pressure anymore. It feels like coming home to yourself. Your actions will always follow the story you believe about yourself. If you see yourself as a procrastinator, a quitter, someone who just can't stay consistent, then no matter how many goals you set, you'll find a way to sabotage them. Because deep down, your actions are just echoing your beliefs. But The moment you rewrite that belief even just a little, you open the door to a new kind of effort. A quiet, humble, powerful effort that doesn't need fanfare. It just needs truth. And here's the beautiful part: identity isn't something you wait to earn. It's something you step into. Every time you act in alignment with who you want to become, you cast a vote for that version of yourself. One healthy meal, one early wake-up, one focused hour of work. Each choice says, "This is who I am now." And eventually your brain stops questioning it. You stop trying to become the person. You are the person. That's the gift of systems. They don't just help you succeed. They help you believe. They give you a new lens through which to see yourself. And when your self-image shifts, your life follows. Because in the end, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. So make it strong, make it honest, and build a system that reminds you every single day of who you truly are. When you chase a goal and hit a setback, the weight of that failure can feel personal, crushing. You poured yourself into a finish line that never arrived, and now it feels like all that effort was for nothing. But the truth is, failure only feels like the end when you've built your journey around a single outcome. When everything depends on that one point in time, any delay, any misstep, any derailment hits like a collapse. That's the fragile way of living, chasing goals without a structure underneath. Now imagine a different path. Instead of locking yourself into a rigid outcome, you build a system. You focus on the inputs, the actions, the daily efforts that compound. Let's say you wanted to launch a business in 3 months. You had a vision, a timeline, a dream, and then life happened. The product wasn't ready, the market didn't respond. You missed the deadline. If all you had was the goal, it would feel like you failed. But if you had a system like reaching out to 3 potential customers every day, launching 1 idea per week, testing and tweaking as you go, then even in the face of delay, you're still in motion. You're still learning. You're still building. The system doesn't break, it bends. And that flexibility is what makes you powerful. This is what it means to be anti-fragile. Not just resilient in the face of adversity, but actually strengthened by it. Fragile things shatter under pressure. Anti-fragile things grow from it. And systems are what turn you into something anti-fragile. Because setbacks don't end the journey, they shape it. Every failed attempt becomes data. Every obstacle becomes insight. Every no becomes a stepping stone to the right yes. When you live by a system, you don't fear failure, because you've stopped measuring your worth by whether the outcome happened on schedule. Think about a tree. Its roots don't deepen on sunny days, they deepen during the storm. When the wind hits hard, the tree learns to anchor itself deeper into the ground. That's what a good system does, it anchors you. It gives you stability when everything else is uncertain, because it's not built on external results. It's built on your internal rhythm, consistency over intensity, process over perfection. You show up every day, not because you're promised success, but because this is who you are now. The system teaches you to trust the work, even when you can't see the outcome yet. And that trust builds strength. It builds emotional immunity. So when others fall apart at the first failure, you lean in, you adapt, you grow. One of the most dangerous myths we believe is that success should be a straight line. But it never is. It's messy. It's full of loops, delays, setbacks, and doubts. The people who make it aren't the ones who had perfect timing. They're the ones who kept going when it didn't work. They didn't rely on fragile hope. They relied on a framework they trusted. So when things go wrong you won't be crushed. You'll learn, you'll improve. You'll adjust the system, refine the approach, and keep moving. Because systems don't stop when you fail, they help you absorb failure and keep moving forward. This is how you create lasting change. This is how you build something unbreakable. Not through perfect wins, but through imperfect, consistent action day after day, step after step. When you have that, you don't just survive the pressure. You grow stronger because of it. A goal ends. A system evolves. That simple truth separates short-lived success from lifelong mastery. Too often, we chase goals like they're destinations, final checkmarks that will somehow unlock fulfillment. We tell ourselves, once I get that promotion, I'll feel secure. Once I lose those 10 kilos, I'll feel confident. Once I cross that finish line, I'll feel complete. But what happens after you get there? What happens the day after you achieve the goal? The moment passes and now you're left with the silence. No direction. No momentum. And often, no reason to keep going because goals give you a moment. Systems give you meaning. Think about Michael Jordan. He didn't rise to greatness just because he wanted to win championships. That desire was part of it, but it wasn't the core. He became great because he fell in love with the grind, early morning workouts, relentless drills, late-night film sessions, day after day commitment to excellence. That wasn't a temporary sprint to glory, it was a system. A life designed around the pursuit of constant improvement. The rings were just a side effect. That's what most people miss. When you fixate on a goal, you might hit it, but you stop growing the moment it's done. When you build a system, the growth never ends. The journey becomes a lifestyle. It doesn't depend on deadlines. It depends on identity. A writer who says, I want to finish a book, might push hard for 6 months, meet the deadline, and then stop writing. But a writer who commits to 30 minutes of writing every day, no matter what, that writer doesn't just write one book. They write for a lifetime because they've become someone who writes. They've stopped chasing an outcome and started living a rhythm. This mindset doesn't just apply to work. It touches every part of your life. Wanting a strong relationship is a goal. Choosing daily acts of presence, communication, and kindness. That's a system. Wanting to be rich is a goal. Creating systems of smart spending, automatic investing, and consistent learning about money, that's how wealth actually happens. Wanting peace is a goal. But waking up to journal, going for a walk, breathing deeply, and setting boundaries, that's a system. The external goal is temporary. The internal system is infinite. Systems are what carry you through when life changes, when motivation fades, when goals shift. Because goals are often outside your control. You might aim to double your income, but the economy crashes. You might train for a marathon, but an injury forces you to stop. When your identity is tied to the goal alone, those moments can break you. But when you've built a system that evolves, with you, those same moments just become chapters in a longer story, because the system doesn't care about the scoreboard. It cares that you showed up. It cares that you put in the work, that you honored the process. And when you keep showing up over time, you not only improve, you transform. Success that lasts is never about hitting a peak. It's about building a path you can walk every day, one that doesn't depend on willpower, applause, or external rewards. One that aligns with who you want to become, not just once, but over and over again. You don't have to run faster. You just have to keep running. So yes, set goals if you must. Let them give you direction, but don't let them define your worth or your journey. Because when the goal ends, it's the system that keeps you growing. And growth is not a destination. It's a decision you make every single day. So ask yourself, not, what do I want to achieve? Ask, what kind of system can I build that makes success inevitable? Success doesn't belong to those who dream once. It belongs to those who build daily. Trade your goals for systems. Trade short-term results for long-term identity, and you'll discover the truth. You don't need motivation when you've built a machine. Start small. Be consistent. Let the system carry you when your willpower can't, because in the end, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you repeat.